to everybody here. My name is Yves Caban. I'm a professor at the University College London at the DPU. I'm the chair of development planning. So my main business deals with planning. When we came here and prepared this report, this was the group called Advisory Group on Forced Evictions to the Executive Director for the UN, Habitat. It's a 15-person committee and I have been chairing it till it was extinct. And it's in a transition phase now. Over the last 7 years I was chosen as that. It's a global advisory group to the UN dealing with evictions all over the world. So one of the activities which explains this report is that we were requested, upon request from people like you here, from the Gypsy Councils, local authorities, to visit some places in the world, like Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, Argentina. And for the first time, there was a report because of the situation in a developed country, in the UK. So it's a new kind of what we were supposed to do were the 6 following elements, just to give you the... It will be a brief presentation, but please download this report for those of you who want to have the more insider side of it. Please download this report from the UN Habitat site, and you can download this report for free. We were supposed to examine 6 things. 1, verify and map ongoing events of forced evictions and provide evidence. Not words, but see if it was happening or not. Assess the territorial planning system in the visited areas to identify the reasons why the tools and mechanisms for the allocations of sites needed to address the housing needs of travelers and gypsies, and haven't been working and have been de facto excluding them from achieving their rights. The third was to meet and listen to the various stakeholders. We didn't listen only to the communities around London of gypsies and travellers and Romani. We listened to local authorities, with a lot of the police. I mean, it was a very wide consultation that we did. Here in Basildon, we had a large meeting with the local authorities in order to have our own independent views. We had a very difficult exercise, which is to identify who are the duty bearers, who are responsible. And this is, you can imagine, a very delicate task to do. We had to identify positive actions that are taken and encourage constructive dialogues and come up with some suggestions and recommendations. So this report was prepared. It was I was leading the team who worked. We had another international person, a lawyer, Leticia Osorio, a Brazilian woman, and 2 local experts, which were Candy Sheridan, who was elected councillor, and Joseph Jones, and both of them from the Gypsy Council. So the 4 of us visited a number of sites around London. And one of them was Dale Farm because of its importance and its size. So what I like to share with you is the key conclusions here. The first one is very clearly that not only in Dale Farm, but in most places that we visited, this country is violating international rights that the government has been signing and ratifying. So in other words, even if the UK is promoting internationally democracy and right-based approach, in the country, unfortunately, our conclusion was that they are violating the covenants they signed on 3 grounds, and I leave you to the report to get more information about that. The first one is the right to adequate housing. The right to adequate housing is a universal right that includes not only travelers and gypsies, but any of us. That's number one. And in a very important element for here, for Dale Farm, in international law, is that one of the 7 elements which describe what is adequate housing is security of tenure, to have a place to stay in terms of land, and to be culturally adequate, meaning to your style of life. If you live on caravan and if you live in pitches, this is embedded into this adequate, the notion of what is adequate and non-adequate. So there is truly here a violation in the sense that no solution has been provided. The second piece of rights which has been not respected refers to the right to be defended against forced evictions. This is the second element. And it says, and I think important to say it here, forced eviction is defined as the permanent or temporary removal against their will of individuals, families and communities from the homes or the land which they occupy without the provision of and access to appropriate forms of legal or other protection. So in other words, what we understand, and this Dale Farm is an important case in that sense, is that the people are removed against their will, so it falls exactly under that. And from the evidence we have, there hasn't been any proper solutions in case of relocation. We heard from the information we have that 83 out of the 83 families, 20 were offered a 1-bedroom bricks and mortar solution, which is not compatible with the notion of adequate housing and with what should be that defense against eviction. And the third piece of law which exists, which to our opinion is not respected by the country and by the local authorities here, and it hurts international rights, are the special rights and on non-discrimination. This is a very serious issue. There can't be discrimination because you are a gypsy or a traveller, you are a British citizen, and you have specific rights because you are an ethnic minority, and this has to be respected. There's a full piece of legal literature on that, but what we say here, not based only on Dale Farm, is that this is the third element which is not being respected. So it's one of the first time, and you can imagine our position is extremely difficult as an appointed group with central government funding the UN system to come with the conclusion that is that the UK is infringing international laws. So it puts us in a very difficult position as an ACFI group, which is not the UN. We put our recommendations to the UN, who was commending that. Now, the second, so that's on rights. The second element, which is even more important probably and more practical here, is that we examine not the rights but the policies and what the government should do, being national, regional or local. So we examined all the laws which were existing, I mean since the 60s, 68, 94, 2004, 2006, 2008, so we have a relatively good, and I'm a planner here, it's my profession, so we could examine all the policies. What is very clear, and here let me say that probably in terms of planning laws, this country is very interesting. It's one of our reference. We think that what you have elaborated is quite interesting. The only issue is that it's not respected. In other words, in the 2004 Housing Act and the 2006 January Housing Act, the local authorities should provide pitches. Let's be clear, they should provide plots. This is their duty. If they want it or not, it's another issue, but this is their responsibility. There was a fantastic work which was done, it can be improved, we saw some flaws in it, which was the assessment of the needs of the Irish travelers and gypsy population. So that was done for this region, and technically Joseph was part of the team that identified which were the unmet needs. That was consolidated at the regional level, and that each local authority should provide, in a certain time frame, pitches. Basildon is supposed, I mean, the unmet needs in Basildon County is 62 pitches. So they haven't been provided. And this is more than what is needed. So our very clear conclusion, and you can cite me on that, is that the local authority responsibility has not been met. They haven't been provided the pitches they should provide for the people who are Irish travelers and gypsy. So this is a serious element which shows that who is infringing the law is not the people, it is the local government which is not providing pitches. This is what they should do. On top of that, what is very clear in the policy rules of this country is that you need to provide pitches of the unmet needs, but at the same time in your local development plan there should be places dedicated for gypsies and travelers. So that's something which is extremely clear, and this hasn't been done. And therefore, what to do in front of a local authority which is not complying with its duty? In that case, there is no enforcement against local authorities to do that. The other element that we observed is that it's probably, out of my experience on that, and Cassidy, my colleague, is going to present one of our research in different countries, is that we have never seen a country that claims to be democratic, respectful of rights, which has been able to evict over 50 times the same family because they are off-the-road travelers. And one of our conclusions is that probably the most critical situation in this country about housing gypsies and travelers is the off-the-road travelers. Those who are exposed to all the insults permanently. They are opposed to all the violence, the day-to-day violence, xenophobia and racism. We gathered incredible histories. But on top of that, these same families can be removed forcibly over 50 times a year. We've never seen that in any place in the world. And this I want to make it clear that it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable by not only right standards, it's not acceptable because it doesn't meet any right international approved law. It's simply not acceptable from a humane point of view. We're speaking of people like us, we're speaking of kids, we're speaking of elderly, we're speaking of people having their difficulties in life. How can you go to school? So what I mean to say here is probably meeting at Dale Farm has a symbolic value, and your presence it's symbolic too. But there are many Dale Farms which are invisible every day in this country. Off-the-road travelers, non-permanent site. And there should be truly, and this is one of our 20 points proposal to the UN to be transferred to the government. We made a proposal in 20 points because one of the points would be to truly identify all the problems like Dale Farm in the country, and not to go on a one-to-one basis. This would be very important. At the same time, and I don't want to expand too much in order to have your questions, at the same time, coming to Dale Farm, what we are used to in most of our missions are 1 million people losing their homes, you know, Zimbabwe, 1 million people. With the Olympic Games, Beijing, 1.2 million people. You go to Port Harcourt. Who knows where is Port Harcourt? Nigeria, because of the tension, is on a go 200,000 people. So these are large numbers. And here we find ourselves with a national problem for 42 pitches. How 51 pitches? How on earth such a developed country is unable to solve peacefully the situation of 51 pitches? You've got all the instruments to do it. You've got, and I can testify on that, this has been my job for a number of years to be on the eviction documentation and research. I think that both, today I can say my friends, Joseph Jones and Lee Sheridan, are probably among the best person that you can find to understand the Gypsy and Irish travelers issues. They have the answers in their hands. They work with communities. So one of the conclusions we said out of our 20 points is that there should be more participation at each level of the Gypsies. And I would like to say very clearly, Gypsies and travelers are not a problem to my eyes. They are the solution to the problem. Yeah. And I want to stress that the solution to the problem of housing Gypsies and travelers all over the country will be only if we understand, wherever we are, me from the university, you from wherever you come from, that without their voice, without listening to what they are, the specificity of who they are historically, the contribution they did for having beautiful places being cultivated, for all what they produce every day, if it's not done with them, there won't be any good solutions. And I want to be very clear on that. So I repeat myself, sorry for that. They are the solution, they are not the problem. Yeah.